We live in a time where everyone looks powerful, and yet almost no one feels peaceful. We've mistaken attention for impact, I think. We've confused performance with purpose, and then somewhere along the way, we forgot that real power doesn't need an audience necessarily. See, you can tell when a man's power is real. He doesn't really need to advertise it. He doesn't need to dominate the room he's in. He doesn't need to raise his voice. He doesn't need to prove his relevance. He's still, but his stillness carries weight. He's quiet, but his energy just commands attention. That's the difference, I think, between performance and presence. Performance needs validation, whereas presence, it doesn't need anything. See, the one tries to be seen, whereas the other just already is. Here at Bintegers, we believe that power without presence is just a performance. And the world has really had enough of performers who are pretending to be leaders. Integrity is what turns authority into alignment. And intimacy is what turns masculinity into meaning. When you're grounded in both of those, your power stops being this act and starts becoming an atmosphere. Because the strongest men aren't really the ones who are performing confidence. These are the men who are practicing congruence. See, so many men are exhausted because they've been playing a role their whole lives. They've been playing the tough role, right? The one who's calm, the one who's the provider, the hero, the one who's unbothered, right? And so we've turned these survival masks into masculine virtues inherently. And the more that we perform them, the more disconnected we become. And so you can only play strong, I think, for so long before you realize that the act is killing you. Because pretending to be powerful is, I think, the surest sign that you most likely don't feel it. Performance has a sound. Performance is loud. It's calculated. It's controlled. Whereas presence, on the other hand, is quiet, but it's undeniable. It's the stillness that calms the room before you speak. It's the confidence that doesn't really have to compete. It's the strength that doesn't shout, right? And that's the kind of power, I think, that we've forgotten how to model, because it doesn't sell and it doesn't scream. Performance gets attention, whereas presence gets trust. And trust is what power was meant to protect in the first place. And the tragedy is we've built this generation of men who can perform every version of strength except for peace. And we can hold pose, but struggle with a pause. We can project confidence but not really be able to sustain the calm. We can imitate power but not necessarily embody it. And it's not our fault, I think. We were raised in this world that rewards spectacle over substance, and a world that mistakes charisma for leadership and volume for value. But presence doesn't need optics. Presence doesn't need applause. Presence just is. And that's why you cannot fake presence. Because presence is not an act. It's an alignment. So let me say this plainly. You can't be powerful if you're not present. You can be intimidating, you can be persuasive or even dominant, but those are temporary imitations of power, I think. Real power endures because it's not dependent on perception. It's rooted in peace. And if your confidence disappears when you're not in control, that's not confidence. That's performance right there. And if your leadership collapses when you're not being praised, that's not purpose. That's your ego. See, presence doesn't crumble when it's unseen. Presence actually grows stronger in the silence. Presence is built in private, long before it's ever revealed in public. It's in the quiet mornings when you can sit with your thoughts instead of trying to escape them. It's in those moments when you choose patience over posturing. It's in how you treat people who can't really elevate your status. Presence is what remains when the performance, in essence, has ended. And that's why presence is so rare, because most men have built their worth on applause and not alignment. There's a moment, I think, when every man has to come to face, and that's a consideration when the applause fades and when the metrics fall and the image stops impressing even him. That's when you find out whether you've built your life on power or on performance. Because performance always needs proof, right? But if you have presence, it really doesn't need it. Performance ends when people stop watching. But presence, it just continues even when you are alone. Performance often chases validation. But in contrast, presence just cultivates peace. And peace is that one thing that cannot be staged. You can't perform presence because presence requires surrender. And surrender terrifies men who were taught that control equals safety. But control really isolates you. Presence is what connects you. Control perhaps demands perfection, whereas presence really allows imperfection. And that's the shift there that we're all, I think, being invited into. From control to congruence, from spectacle to stillness. Because when your peace depends on performance, you'll always need an audience to feel alive. But when your peace comes from presence, you can stand in silence and still feel like you're whole. I think the reason that so many men feel burned out is because performance doesn't nourish at the core. It drains you. It requires this constant management, constant proof, constant pretending. But presence refuels you. Presence fills you through alignment. It gives you energy instead of extracting it. Presence doesn't need polish. Presence it needs practice. And you build it every time that you tell the truth. Every time that you slow down enough to listen. Every time that you choose being present over appearing impressive. That's the muscle I think we've forgotten to work out. The muscle of being here and not elsewhere. The man who is present does not need to prove. He doesn't need to dominate or argue or convince. He just is. And that isness is his power. Because presence isn't passive. Presence is like the most active form of internal alignment. It's awareness embodied. It's self-trust made visible. And that's why people can feel it before you speak. Because it's not a look, it's a frequency. And you can't fake groundedness. You can only practice it until it becomes who you inherently are. This is the work that I do inside this new course on my website, In the Ashes of the Alpha Male. Because power without presence is performance. And performance always ends in exhaustion. But in this foundational course, I want to help you notice how you've been performing strength instead of actually embodying it. I would consider this like more of a deep dive to this month's series here. And it'll take you further into rebuilding your confidence. It doesn't really need control to feel secure. So you can find this course at my website, Bintegers.com. Go check it out there, because power isn't about how you look. It's about how you last. But here's the truth. I would say that every man has to come to face, and that is he has to outgrow the performance that once protected him. The armor that used to keep you safe will, I think, eventually just start to suffocate you. And that's when presence becomes the only path forward. Because presence isn't the absence of armor. Presence is the decision to stop hiding behind it. It's being in the room or in the body or in your truth. And like where you're no longer rehearsing your worth, but you're just now remembering that it was always there. Presence doesn't demand attention. It commands peace. It's the energy, if you will, that settles chaos. The tone that brings clarity. The eye contact that says, you're safe here. And that's leadership. Not performance, not control, not pretending, but just your presence. And the more you embody it, the less you need to perform it, because real power doesn't seek to be noticed. Real power seeks to be useful. And you'll know you've stepped out of performance when the stillness no longer feels like failure, and when silence doesn't scare you anymore, when you stop chasing moments and instead where you start creating meaning. That's, I think, the point where performance dies and the man finally lives. Because presence isn't necessarily what you do, it's who you become when you stop trying to impress and start trying to inhabit. So here's a question I think all us men need to ask at some point in time, and that is, am I performing power or am I practicing presence? Because the one really exhausts the soul, whereas the other one anchors it. And the world doesn't really need more men who are performing power. This world needs more men whose presence heals the rooms that we're in. Next episode tomorrow, we'll talk about what that healing actually costs, because staying in presence requires humility, and humility demands honesty, right? So that's episode 12, the cost of always having to be right. So we'll face that final illusion that every one of us men have to unlearn, and that's being correct is more important than being connected. We'll address that tomorrow in tomorrow's episode, but thank you for watching this one. I hope to see you tomorrow. Please do drop me a comment down below. Let me know how this episode landed with you. See you soon.